Hey guys, it's the Disco Spider, and I decided to switch things up with my cartoon series reviews. Instead of reviewing just one newer cartoon series a month, I decided to review two in one video, since they release a ton of cartoons yearly that I can barely review even a fraction of them. So with reviewing two each month, I'll have more of a chance to get through most cartoons that they release every year. But these cartoons that I review together will have a theme, even if it's just a small theme. And this video's theme will be Netflix original series. Today I will look upon two of the most popular Netflix cartoon series, besides BoJack Horseman. Voltron, Legendary Defenders, and Trollhunters. If you're only interested in my thoughts of Trollhunters, then here is a timestamp for when that review starts. But until then, here is my review on the new Voltron series. Voltron Legendary Defenders is about a group of 5 people who take control of these lion mechas, which, when they put together, forms the mighty Voltron. Now they must stop the evil Zarkon from ruling the world and getting his hands on the Black Lion. This series was animated by the same studio that animated Legend of Korra, which you can easily tell it follows the same heavy anime-inspired designs of the show, which makes sense since this is a reboot of an anime. The animation, while being limited, still looks great. I love the character designs, especially of the creatures that the team encounters, and the places the team goes look beautiful, but the best parts of the animations are hands down the action scenes. Not only do we have small scale action scenes where it's just one-on-one sword fights, but this is a mecha show, so we see a lot of mecha battles which just look spectacular. And then we have the characters. Every single one of these characters are very cliched. They follow the same tropes as a lot of action shows like these do. The leader of the group, the hothead hotshot, the comic relief who has an ego and likes to hit on the ladies, the smart one, and the food lover. They seem like tropes you'd find in any other cartoon series, but the execution of the characters in this show are done pretty well. The idea doesn't really matter, all that matters is the execution, and the execution of these characters are done pretty well. I like a vast majority of these characters. Shiro is an interesting character, having a cool backstory that ties in with the villain. Pigeon Lance, who are very fun and likable, and Hunk, who at first I couldn't stand, but later on I started to kinda like. He became more noble and focused, since I thought he would be the very silly one who is always scared and loves to eat. So pretty much Shaggy Rogers. They give him some development in the first season that I really liked, and although his constant changing to his noble person to the food-loving scaredy cat gets a little bit daunting at times. And then we have Keith, who honestly isn't a bad character, he just hasn't been focused on, except for one episode. He doesn't stand out to me like Lance or Pidge does, but he's not awful. He's more in the middle, but I bet he will be more focused on in the next seasons. And as for Allura and Koran, they are likable characters, and they do have an interesting backstory, and that I'd like to see more of. But what makes these characters so amazing is the relationship these characters have. The best episodes, in my opinions, are the ones where it's just these 7 characters hanging out, whether it be as a whole group or just in small quantities. They work very well off each other, and that's mainly the reason why they're not the same old cookie cutters that you'll find in other shows, but actually likable characters. But then we have the negatives of this show. My one big flaw for the show is that there isn't much going on in the plot. The plot is that they have to defeat Emperor Zarkon, but they don't build on that plot. It just feels empty, with most episodes being about the characters trying to get ready to fight Zarkon and finding allies. It feels like we're just waiting for them to finally strike. A show that has a very similar premise, Avatar: The Last Airbender, at least build on the main plot, having Aang have to do these things before fighting in the Fire Nation. He had to go to each nation, master all the elements. Alongside, we had some subplots with Zuko and Uncle Iroh, and other threats that led to interesting episodes. In this show, however, we wait 2 seasons for them to finally attack Zarkon, but it doesn't seem like none of the episodes in preparation they had really mattered. They could have struck Zarkon on like episode 3 of season 2 or something. And then we have the character backstories and development, and although I do like that they are trying to do them, and the backstories themselves are interesting, and I do want to see more of them, but they seem to get abandoned or forgotten about. They'd bring up something from someone's past, and although they would be the main focus on the episode, and let the character get some development, but then they just abandon that and just leave and just go on to the next character's development. For example, the whole backstory of Pidge was a big part of the first few episodes of season 1, but after the first few episodes, they decided to forget all about it and move on to Shiro's backstory, even though her backstory wasn't even finished. And Pidge barely brings up her backstory throughout the entire series, except for maybe a couple of times in the last couple of episodes of season 2. So although they do get some development in that particular episode, they just forget about it and it doesn't really translate well to the other episodes. It would have been better if each episode there would have been a little subplot for every character. Maybe episode 3 could have had Pidge's and Shiro's backstory, and then like episode 5 could have focused more on Pidge's, and episode 7 also Shiro's, and also introduce another backstory in episode 8, something like that. Instead of having this giant backstory told on us on one episode, they could have just sprinkled it throughout the entire series. And then we have our main villain himself, Zarkon. He is very unthreatening. His whole army, besides the witch, is just not threatening, and that's because we don't really get to see much of him. Every time we see him, he's just, the typical bad guy you see in any other cartoon like this. There's nothing interesting about him, although his designs do look good. His character himself is nothing interesting and kinda boring. It would have been better if they did something where he was kept hidden or only talked about in a very frightening way, so we could build up the suspense of him being such a bad guy until maybe the last episode of season 2 or something, like the Fire Lord in Avatar: The Last Airbender. And lastly, my final flaw for the show is that the last 2 episodes of the second season were the weakest ones. It was finally the episodes where the teams attack Zarkon, the main villain, and these episodes should have been like the grandest and amazing best episodes of the series. And although I do love the animation on the fight scenes throughout the whole episode, the episode itself is very weak. Because throughout season 2 and the end of season 1, we already saw the team face off against them about 3 or 4 times. So here it was more of the same. We already saw all of this and it just felt underwhelming. It's like, yeah, we know you guys are fighting each other. Didn't you do this like 7 episodes ago, like 3 times? There was just no suspense there, and I just didn't really care for the last few episodes. So overall, although I did have quite a few problems with the show, I still did enjoy it. It may not be as good as everyone says it is, but it's not that bad either. It's a fun and enjoyable show that does have its flaws. Before going into Voltron the Legendary Defenders, I thought this was going to be a great show, from everyone overhyping it, saying how amazing it is, but then when I watched it, it turned out to be just okay. And that's the exact opposite how I feel about Trollhunters. The show is about a teenager named Jim who finds his amulet that transforms him into the Troll Hunter. Now with the help of his friends, he must stop any bad troll threatening to do harm to the world. The premise sounds like your typical Monster of the Week type show, but that's not true at all. Each half of a season has one main troll villain, and season 1 also had a main villain throughout the entire series, along with the side villains. And a lot of episodes led to the next episode. I did not expect it from a show like this, but it has heavy story arc. But unlike Voltron, where they have this one story arc through the entire season and fail, this one succeeds very well. I love how the show progresses, which is something that not a lot of story arc type shows get. You can't always have the same overarching plot without building anything on it, but this show actually does. The show has little subplots, like when Blinky turns into a human, or Claire's brother being trapped in the Darklands, and a lot more. And I like how they don't keep the same plot for the 26 episode season. Although I bet that's because they were meant to be in 2 13-episode seasons, but ended up put together. And the plot itself may not sound all that great, since it's pretty much basic and done before. A villain builds a portal from an evil dimension to free his father, but the build-up they had in each episode was amazing, and really paid off in episode 13. And like I said, I love the progression in this show. Almost each character changes throughout the season. Some characters start off as a bad guy but turn to a good guy, and some people may start off like as a little character but then actually turn into someone threatening and actually important to the story. And the second half of season 1 may not really have a plot, but there's still a lot going on in those last 13 episodes. And it still really captivated me and led me to want to keep binge watching it. After coming off Voltron, which I thought the worst aspect of the show was the plot, I'm really glad to see a show like this which has an amazing and progressive plot. And then we have the characters. At first, none of them really stood out. They were your typical tag team you'd see in any show like this. The straight, everyday man who is really nice and can't handle the powers he possesses. Fat, goofy one who is always there, even if he isn't really needed. The love interest who's only there to have a character in the main character's regular life. A teacher who teaches the main character how to use his powers, a character who think he'd be way more suited to have the powers instead of the main character, the tough one who is actually really soft, and the character who is on both sides of the main character's everyday life and his other life. But as time went on, almost each character started to get a lot of development and started to grow on me. The best example of this is Arg. At first, I didn't really care about him. He's like Eduardo from Foster's Home, but done worse. But after each episode, he started to get a lot of development, which I was really thrown off with. And in the last episode of the first season, he starts to be such an amazing character, and a character I wouldn't expect from a Eduardo-typed character. He goes through so much in the first season, and he just becomes a 3-dimensional, likable character. And then we have our main character, Jim. He is a very likable character. He starts off pretty relatable, but then starts getting some development. Seeing the struggles of his normal life and the troll life keep clashing together makes you root for him even more. And then we have the main villain of the show, which I won't say who since it is a spoiler, but I like how he progresses in this season, and I'd love to see more of him next season. And then we have Blinky and Claire, who I like, and I'm still really surprised that they got Kelsey Grammer to be part of the show and voice Blinky. They are both here to support Jim, and they do get their own plotline and development, so they don't become a total useless character. And the two villains in the first season are cool. They might not stand out like the main one, but they do look really threatening and have an amazing character design. But as for the characters I don't like, we have two. Bhullar starts off as your typical guy who thinks he's more deserving of the powers, but after Jim beats him and proves himself worthy, he joins his side and becomes part of the group and becomes bland. He doesn't do much in the show and he's not in much episodes, but every time he's on screen he just isn't that interesting of a character. But my least favorite character has to hands down be Toby. Toby is really annoying. He's the goofy and silly one of the group, but everything he says just annoys me. Plus, he doesn't really go through much in this series, except for having someone to live with him. Then we have the animation. The animation is absolutely amazing. It looks like movie quality. In fact, this was supposed to be a movie. First a live-action movie, then an animated movie, until they decided to make it into a TV show. I especially love the trolls. They have such a unique design, which makes a lot of the villains very threatening. Overall, I really love Trollhunters. This is a must-see show, although I know it probably won't attract much people since it does look like a bad show, which I was kind of expecting when I first came into it, but it totally surprised me. I really hope to see more Netflix shows like this, and hopefully the next season of Trollhunters will be as good or even better than this season. So those were my review of Voltron, Legendary Defenders, and Trollhunters. But what do you guys think of both these shows? Leave in the comments. I'm curious to see anyone's opinions on Voltron and Trollhunters. Also leave in the comments if you like the idea of me reviewing 2 cartoon series in one video, or would you just want me to stick with the one-on-one every month? It's up to you guys. And also suggest me some newer cartoons that I should review. And also if you like this video, leave a thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me, want to see more of my reviews of cartoons, then do subscribe. But anyways, I'm the Disco Spider, and peace out.